excited about pursuing your own education already. I'm Pam. I just finished my 15th year of homeschooling. I sadly won't be doing it anymore, I don't think. But there's still an opportunity, possibly, maybe, in the future. So, I have a quote here by Confucius that says, "To put the world in order, we must first put the nation in order. To put the nation in order, we must first put the family in order. To put the family in order, we must first cultivate our personal life. We must first set our hearts right." And this is a principle that we learn when we talk about putting your own oxygen mask on, when you're on an airplane, or we've heard the anecdotes of
Karen, you need to go.
I can't give the correct source, but you've heard the story before where someone comes to a wise man and says, "Can you please tell me how to stop eating sugar," or whatever the bad habit was, and he says, "Well, come back in 30 days and I'll tell you how." And it turns out he had to do it himself first in order to. So yes, we need to set our hearts right. If we don't have
That
it.
was Gandhi, by the way. That was Gandhi, by the way.
Oh, okay. Was he asked that question?
Yeah. So this. Do you want me to tell it?
Sure.
There's a woman and her son, and they had to like take a train to get to him. It was a long journey that took multiple days, and they get all the way to him, and the woman says, "Can you please tell my son to stop eating sugar? He's rotting out his teeth. It's really bad for his health." And Gandhi says, "Go home. Come back in 2 weeks." And so she gets back on the train, goes all the way home. 2 weeks later, makes the trek out again, and comes back and says, "Okay, it's been 2 weeks. Gandhi, can you please tell my son to stop eating sugar now?" And he looks at the boy and says, "Don't eat too much sugar. Listen to your mother." And she says, "Gandhi, why couldn't you just tell us that 2 weeks ago? So we could have saved us this trip." And he said, 2 weeks ago, I was eating too much sugar. I had to stop before I could tell him not to.
Yeah, well, it's a powerful principle. If we don't have it, we can't give it. I have a short video clip to show you from a TV show that my family and I like to watch together. Have you guys ever seen Madam Secretary? No.
Is it old?
Not super old, but I can fairly confidently recommend it as a good family show. I wouldn't say that there's never anything in there that didn't make me go, but I'm pretty picky, and anyway, it's a really good show. So I'll set up this clip. There's a young woman who has become a trauma nurse. She has enlisted in the military. She's about to be deployed. She's got some reservations, and she's a little concerned about what the demands will be like. So she's going out to lunch with her two uncles, one of whom is a veteran combat fighter pilot, and the other is a trauma surgeon who was deployed as a trauma surgeon in war situations. And she's just getting some advice from them. Not this one. I never get it quite exactly.
You've got some pretty poignant jitters.
What?
I asked Will to join us because I thought it might be nice for you to talk to someone who's has some background in combat medicine, you know, in case you have any last minute questions or concerns.
Look, Uncle Henry, I know I freaked out for a second last night, but I'm not afraid.
For yourself. The safety of your patients is what you're worried about. But despite all your training, when gurneys from some IED attacks start rolling in, you won't have what it takes, am I right?
What if I'm not good enough? What if the patient dies because I screwed up?
Well, let me put your mind at ease. You are going to screw up, and some of your patients are going to die.
Okay, should we just order?
Hopefully those two things won't overlap, but you can't let fear of either paralyze you. Let me ask you something. When it comes to being a successful trauma nurse, what do you think the most important trait to have is?
Training, obviously.
Well, I'm told you were near the top of your class, so I'm not worried about training. What else?
Staying cool under pressure.
Getting warmer. And the biggest determinant of whether or not you'll be able to stay cool under pressure is sleep. Booyah! How do you sleep, Sarah? Are you a good sleeper?
I can power down anywhere. Airplane, nurses lounge, back of the Humvee,
Well, that's great.
anywhere.
Great. You'll be fine.
Great. Order.
That's it. That's all I got. The vast majority of medical errors happen when the provider is too tired to think clearly. So, if you don't want to make mistakes, just get all the sleep you
But
can.
what if I had told you I wasn't a good sleeper?
Then I would have said to take your nursing degree and go work in a nursing home, because trauma medicine ain't for you.
Yeah, believe it or not, I find that oddly comforting.
Oddly comforting. That's me.
So I love that clip. When I first saw it, when we were just watching the show together at home, it was kind of one of those deer in the headlights moments, because I'm a terrible sleeper. And I realized that kind of showed me how important self-care is. If we don't have it, we can't give it. We have to be willing to prioritize our own health and the things that we need, and including our own education, in order for our kids to get that, for them to get the message, the education, the experience, anything that they need to get from us. We have to get it for ourselves first. So if we need to eat better so that we can be more alert and more engaging, if we need to do what it takes to sleep better so that we can be in a better mood, more energized, if we need to get more exercise, all the things that allow us more longevity and to be a better person, our kids will benefit from if we will take steps to prioritize those things for ourselves. Yeah, Karen.
So Meredith told me something once, and it was so wise. I was just like exhausted. I was completely exhausted. And she said, Karen, you've got to learn to parent yourself. If you would not let your kids stay up this late because they have to get up early, you have to tell yourself, no, I have to go to bed because I have to get up early. And you have to be your own parent. And that just sticks with me now. Whenever I'm about to do something that, goes against the principles of self-care, I have Meredith's voice in my head saying, parent yourself, put yourself to bed, or stop and go get a snack, or whatever it is I need to do. I can do that and give myself permission to do that because I've become my own parent.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good way to look at it. I'm going to remember that too.
Yeah.
So. Okay. The most effective way to ensure the quality of your kids' education is to consistently improve your own. So your education is not going to pursue you. You have to pursue it, and it's an active pursuit. Some of my kids are grown and gone, and I can now look at them and be like, oh, I can see what you got from me. Because now it's playing out, My oldest has 2 kids, and she is homeschooling them, and so I'm like, as I'm a first-generation homeschool parent, and so I'm like, wow, that is the biggest compliment I could ever get, for my kid to be like, well, yeah, we're homeschooling. I'm like, really? That's so amazing. And then my son didn't want to go to college because he didn't want to pay for it. But he has a very technical job working for SpaceX, doing robotics and 3D printers, does their printer maintenance for in Washington for SpaceX. And he loves it. He's a workaholic, in fact. He's turned his 2-car garage into a lab, and he's creating a startup printing 3D printing drones and outfitting them with paintball guns with these seed pods that he made himself so that he can contract with lumber companies to go out and do their replanting for them with his drones. Anyway, my husband's an engineer, so you can see the connection there. My husband didn't ever sit him down and be like, well, this is what we ought to do, and this is how I think we ought to do it. It was just a natural, organic experience for both of them. I have a daughter who's in the military, and we've always been a very patriotic family, and her Quest class really solidified that for her. And she used to carry the 5,000-year leap around in her backpack and whip it out in class at the Air Force Academy to explain things in detail.
Wow.
You would love that.
That's awesome.
Is that Delia?
Yes.
Of course it is.
And then I have a daughter who just got married, and she's never really been an academic kind of a kid. I mean, she's bright. Our kids are all bright. But I love homemaking. I love homesteading. I love to cook. I do a lot with sourdough. I like the house to be clean. I'm not saying that I'm really particularly talented or good at any of those things, but I like them and I pursue them. Well, on our family Marco Polo group chat, what does she share with us on a daily basis as a married girl? Well, this is the status of me cleaning the bathrooms, and I just finished the floor, and now I'm going to make this for dinner. And so I'm like, okay, I guess that's what you got from me, She loves that. She's just super, super focused on it. And so my point is that our kids are getting from us whatever it is that we prioritize, whatever it is. They are getting it, whether it's what we want them to get or what we intend or ask them to get. What they're getting is what we have to give. So when you are studying the example, learning lessons and sharing them, you will be doing the most important thing you can to improve your children's education. This is equally true of parents and teachers. And that last sentence kind of enlists us as parents and as mentors at NSSA to pursue the things that we're asking the kids to do, so that we can, like Gandhi, ask them to do it with integrity. And it's inspiring. It's very inspiring to come across one of the kids from your class and say, oh, and did you love it when they did this in whatever book that you guys are reading? And it's very engaging to them. I have one friend who was homeschooled as a kid, and I don't know anybody else who was homeschooled as a kid that's an adult now. And so she was being homeschooled through the 70s when no one did it, and you were pretty suspect if you were. And there was no resources or curriculum for her parents to buy or to really learn from. And so they were reading John Holt, who's very radical. And do you know who John Holt is? I keep looking at you with the camera.
It's by design.
And his philosophy that they read at the time was, not only does your kid not need that workbook, but don't give it to them, it'll destroy their creativity. So that's the approach that she grew up with. And she actually did go to public school for a year. She's the oldest in her family, and then they decided to homeschool. And her mom was a little bit disappointed at first because she said that after reading all these John Holt books, she had expectations of what her kid was going to pursue on her own. And so she brought her home, and she would spend hours and hours in the bathroom doing her hair. And her mom was a little puzzled by that. And I share this because her mom shared it with us as a Commonwealth group years ago in Oregon. And then after thinking about it for a while, she realized that her daughter was in the bathroom learning how to learn. Because it took a great deal of concentration for a first grader to figure out how to manipulate your hands in a way to allow your hair to turn out in a certain way. And learning how to learn is different for everybody, and it looks different for everybody, and it needs to happen in order for the progress to get past that point, to actually apply the learning once you learn how to learn. So she also explained to us, my friend did, that one inspiring thing that her parents did was after dinner, and this was, again, just kind of an organic thing. Her parents would sit at the table and talk about politics and history and geography and the news and everything that they read during the day to each other. And the kids were just absolutely captivated because the parents were passionate and they were sharing interesting things that the kids just loved to hear. And it was very engaging. And now my friend and all of her siblings have master's degrees, and they got them all through scholarships. And so when I think about my role as a homeschool parent, I always try to remember that example. And that's not the dynamic that I have in my house, and it wouldn't work for us, but it worked well for them. And there are lots of, like, every family and their dynamic works for them if we can pursue it in a functional way. So, do you guys have any examples of that? Of your kids being inspired by something that you have pursued or included in your life?
I think the dinner table, and I'm really horrible at getting dinner on the table and having dinner. But when we do, we talk a lot and we share with each other.
Sure.
When it actually happens.
Yeah.
So that's what I need to work on is, making sure we have family dinner so that we can have that connection together.
Well, we're down to just one kid at home, and so I really have to fight for that because, with just the three of us, my in-laws are there, but they don't come upstairs. And so it almost seems silly, like why do we have, why can't
Sit
we?
down formally.
Yeah. Why can't we watch this show that we watch together anyway, later, anyway.
Because you're not connecting.
Yeah,
you're watching
you're not.
the show. Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
And we even have some dinner questions, a little container, which we almost never use, but they're there,
It's a
and
good
it
thought.
reminds us. Mm-hmm. Yep. Anybody else?
I have a story. It's just similar to your friends. I think it's fun sometimes to read like a short story or something before dinner. Like, I don't know, one day I did Tokyo Rose, and I went and read, just a little short story about who Tokyo Rose was. I was interested because that's what people called me when I was little.
Really?
And I wanted to understand. They made fun of me because my eyes were so slanted because my face was perfectly round, and I was. And
Wait, get that on camera. Turn your phone and then do that
Do the
face.
selfie.
There you go.
I cannot imagine that.
yeah, I was a chunky baby, and so they called me Tokyo Rose, and I was interested in what this was, and I read the story and found out that there wasn't one Tokyo Rose, there were many Tokyo Roses, and I was so fascinated by this that when I got to dinner that night, I said, guys, I just learned this amazing thing, and everybody was so captivated by it that I started learning a story to tell at dinner time, and it wasn't anything that I would even be able to remember a few months down the line if they asked me for it again, because it never goes to long-term memory, right, unless you really study it. But it was enough to get them to want to learn and then share their own stories. And so that's what I'm seeing now, is that kids are now coming to the table and sharing what they've learned.
That's awesome. Yeah, and see, the domino started with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Okay. So time and again, we have seen that relatively inexperienced parents with a personal commitment to study and individual transformation are extremely effective at communicating passion and commitment to their students. Of course, the effect is so much the better when a mentor is not only passionate but prepared and constantly expanding his ability and repertoire. Such a mentor is worth more than words can say. So I have a bit of a handout here that's intentionally imperfect. I read a book recently called, I think it was called The Power of Fun. And she had this acronym, SPARK. Oh, whoops, I'm still missing one. Hang on, Jennifer. And I felt like it translated really well into personal education. So she says, this is the book. I want to make sure I give proper credit. So she says to make space, and by doing so, we sometimes need to create friction in areas of our lives that we need to reduce or change or eliminate, and then reduce friction in areas that we want to elaborate on or pursue. So she uses our phones as an example, of course. And she describes creating friction with using your phone by putting a rubber band around it or some small visual tactile reminder that, oh, I just grabbed my phone and I didn't need to. Or taking apps off your phone so that, not that you can't use them anymore, but it's going to take an extra step to use it. You have to reinstall it or get on the computer to use it instead. Just to create an extra step for yourself in an area that you want to kind of cinch up a little bit. And then reduce friction in areas that you want to pursue. So for example, if you would like to do more journal writing, then you create an inviting space for your journal to be easily accessible. Your pen's there. If you're gonna walk by it 5 times today, you could sit down and write for 3 minutes, or a book that you want to work on. I know someone who lives in the area. She wrote a book called Being a Present Parent. Her name's Mary Ann Johnson. And she talks about reading 70 books a year, only reading while she's on the toilet. And she's a very efficient person, so I cannot
That's where I
imagine.
should put my bookshelf.
How did you stay in the bathroom uninterrupted that long?
Well, see,
I got tiny kids who are like, Mom,
yeah. Well, she does not have tiny kids at home anymore. But she's a very efficient person, so I cannot imagine that she would go in the bathroom and stay there an unnecessarily long period of time. But,
Oh, I would.
2 hours later.
but she does keep her book in there that she's working on because it's less friction. It's easy to get. It's easy to grab. It's fast. It's convenient, and you're going in there.
Gotta go in there anyway.
Exactly.
And leave your phone out of the bathroom.
Yes.
Unless you're reading on your phone, because that's what I do.
Right.
Yeah, I have the Kindle app as well. I'm
Yeah.
guilty of that. Anyway, so you have to be a little bit creative to consider how you can reduce friction for things that you want to pursue more frequently. Another example is if you want to play an instrument more frequently, leave it out. Leave it sitting right there so that when you do have 1 minute, you can sit down and play a few bars or clarify that chord or something. My brother did that and taught himself to play guitar. He just left it out and just played around with it and dinked around with it all the time to the point where he can play in a band. He plays in a band and does jam sessions. He's really talented. And he never took lessons, he just left it out. So whatever it is that you're interested in, find a way that it can be incorporated in ways, so reduce friction from access to that thing, so it can be incorporated in simple ways. And then pursue passions. There are some questions on the back. I'm sure that none of us are short on ideas, but I like these questions because it broadens the definition of things that you could pursue, especially when it says things like, things I used to do with my free time, but I don't anymore, or when I was a child, I enjoyed. So I want you to really think about when you are going to pursue your own education, you don't have to necessarily make time and brain space to take a constitutional law class, but you could learn how to surf in 1 afternoon, or you could pick up knitting that you only do while you're on the phone or talking or watching TV or something. I want you to validate your efforts, because the things that you are pursuing are being passed to your kids. And it's okay for you to categorize something that you love to do as pursuing your education. And besides, how cool would it be for you to say to your kid, yeah, I'm going surfing? They would love that.
That would be cool.
Especially in Utah.
Well, there's a surfing place in Ogden.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, the simulations.
Yeah, or something like that. You know, you guys have been big baseball fans in your family, and that's kind of a family thing for you, you know. attract fun and learning in a similar ways that we create learning opportunities for ourselves. One thing that I love, an idea that I love that they talked about again in the book, is to do something for a temporary period of time. And I was thinking, yeah, what happened to quilting bees? Why don't we have a one quilt quilting bee, and when it's done, we're done. This is not a lengthy 2-year commitment.
Maybe we should do it in our group.
Do you want to spearhead that?
I don't know how to do it, Pam.
I do know how to do that.
But you just got roped into. Been
Or how
voluntold.
about swing dancing? Why don't we have 3 or 4 couples learn how to swing dance? And haven't been there, but I hear there's a place in South Georgia or
Yeah, I've
something
heard
that
of
have
it.
live
There's
music.
one in Ogden too.
Really?
Where the kids can go on Wednesday nights.
Wednesday nights.
Oh, the
Yeah.
Union Station?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like the country swing dancing.
Okay, or something like that. So if you got 2 or 3 or 4, whatever many size of group that you wanted to participate with together, so that you have some investment in each other and you pursue something for a temporary period of time, that would create memories, it would inspire you, it would inspire your kids, it would help you to pursue things that make you more of you. Rebel against guilt or victimhood. These are really easy things, traps for us to fall into. Whether something you want to do happens or not is whether it happens or not, and it's just fine, and there's no need to feel guilt. You don't have to feel guilty about it in the least. And we also need to protect ourselves from feeling like, well, if so-and-so would have, then I could have, or if only we had had the money, or if only, then, just let all of that go. It is what it is, and we can find moments to pursue tiny things, and in seasons of our lives we can find moments to pursue bigger things, and it's all okay.
What you're talking about is not, like when you were talking about just do a quilting bee, we don't have to be master quilters.
Absolutely not.
We just, it's letting go of the perfectionism
Mhm.
and what it looks like and how good you're at it, and that you have to do it forever or for a long period of time, and you have to do it just right.
Yeah. Well, it's good to learn technique.
Yes.
It's good to learn, effective ways to do certain things. But if learning how to do it properly isn't the goal, then maybe the socialization or the relationship building is the goal, and you don't worry about what the technique is.
Just have fun.
Sure.
Or work on the technique, and if the technique isn't exactly where you envisioned
Then
it,
we call ourselves beginners.
and you let it go, and you say, look at what I accomplished.
That's right. Yep. Okay. So, in the book, they also talk about something called unicorn space, which is this mystical, mythical, magical idea that there is space for something, whether it's physical or in our calendar or in our emotional space, to make something happen. And I'm gonna also show a short video about that. So the author of the book that I showed is actually quoting the person that I'm about to show you an interview for when she talks about the term unicorn space.
Ladies, when is the last time that you had uninterrupted time just for yourself? I'll wait. It's been a while, hasn't it? Well, New York Times bestselling author Eve Brodsky is here to talk about unicorn space and how we need to demand it.
So good to see you.
So good to see you. I'm a huge fan of the book. I keep it very close by. And one of the things I always find myself talking about is unicorn space. So tell everyone out there what that's about.
Well, in my research for Fair Play, which is over 500 men and women, I had so many women tell me that they do not believe that they have permission to be interested in their own lives. So unicorn space is this idea, like the mythical equine. It doesn't freaking exist unless we reclaim the time for ourselves to be interested in our own lives.
So what would you consider unicorn space?
Most people, when I asked them, what would they do with an extra found hour of time, and you couldn't do housework or extra work for work, they broke it down into 3 things. The happiness trio was adult friendship. It was self-care. You know, I would take a bath or take my dog on a walk. Or it was unicorn space, which is the active pursuit of what makes you you. So what's the difference, Maria? Well, I love to eat. Quarantine has been, the way I get through quarantine, my self-care is to eat sweets. The more trans fat, the better. So eating a trans fat baked good would be a self-care, but the baking of a pie would be unicorn space. It's the active pursuit.
So I'm sold on the concept of unicorn space, no doubt about that. How do we make time for it at home? How do we actually negotiate this?
It's funny because fair play is all about the opposite of scorekeeping. We've talked about that before. But in terms of your unicorn space, this is actually the only place where I ask couples to scorekeep, where you both deserve time to be more than your 3 Ps. Like I said, your partnership, being a professional, being a parent, those are important. But the active time for just you, that uninterrupted attention for something that you love, an active pursuit, is for you. And if you know that that's tied to your mental health and your longevity, and also the longevity of your relationship, then it makes it easier if you can start with your why. I want us to invest in each other by giving ourselves permission to be unavailable for each other. And in a pandemic, Maria, we need that more than ever.
Eve, you are the best. Always full of great information. Thank you so much.
So good to see you, Maria.
So the part of that interview that I loved was her describing getting unicorn space by investing in each other. Because if I come to Kelly's house and say, it's 8 p.m. and I'm putting you to bed, I'm investing in your well-being and potentially the quality of my day the next day, if I'm going to spend the day with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we can figure out how to support each other, whether it's us as Commonwealth parents or our spouses, so that we can be invested in one another's well-being and betterment, then we all benefit. And so that's part of pursuing your own education. And especially if you can look at it that way, an investment in yourself or your spouse or each other as Commonwealth parents. So did anything else stand out to you guys?
I guess the question is how do you create more time? I mean, there's the obvious of looking at where you spend your time and seeing if it's worthy or if there's a better way you can spend it. But did they give ideas later on how you can create more time?
Not really. So I trust most of you guys know who Jordan Peterson is.
Yeah.
So I really like to listen to him, and he was in an interview one time where he was asked, my goodness, how did you find the time to write all this stuff? And a lot of what he writes is way beyond me. Like, I'm not gonna read that. His 12 Rules for Life books, they're amazing, and I do, but the other stuff, the Maps of Meaning stuff, it would take a class to understand it. And so anyway, he said straight up and unapologetically, I stole it. I stole it. That's what it took. He said, I wrote for 3 hours a day for 15 years, and I stole the time to do it. And I feel like depending on what it is that we're pursuing, we kind of have to put boundaries on it that firm. Depending on what it is that we're pursuing and the importance of it in our lives. And so I don't think it's, to get back to your question, Kelly, that's why she calls it unicorn space, because it doesn't exist. You know, that extra time doesn't exist. It's a matter of like, okay, so let's talk about dinner. I could either potentially serve a Totino's pizza to my family for dinner, which is fine. And then I would have a lot of extra time to do something else, read with them or go on a bike ride with them or take a class or something. Or I could spend a couple of hours making one of the things I like to make for dinner is chef salad. But there's a lot of chopping in that, and depending on what kind of meat or eggs that I'm going to hard boil and peel and chop, and the dressing, it's just a matter of what I'm trading off. But if I spend the time making the chef salad for dinner, then I'm passing the desire to make a chef salad for dinner onto my kids. Does that make sense? Okay.
So what you're talking about is making a decision.
Yeah.
So, and it's not gonna be the same decision every time. So the trade-off is, tonight I really feel like we need to have a nice dinner, we need a nice chef salad, but then that's not gonna be the decision every night. But then you don't spend your time with any regret. You say, I'm so grateful that I spent that time making that chef salad because now we can have this healthy dinner, and we had a great conversation at dinner.
Yep.
And I'm so grateful that I could go to Little Caesars and get I don't go to Little Caesars. I'm so grateful I could go to Gio's and I could get a pizza for tonight. We don't do it very often. They enjoyed the pizza, and as a result, I got time for